which is when you hear someone talk about painting monochromatically, this is basically what they're talking about. They're only using one color. So what I'm going to do is go dark to light. So I'm going to grab a dark piece of that burnt umber, and we want to create the illusion of round. So I got to create the illusion of where the light is. So in my situation, or how I'm going to paint this, is the sun is going to be coming from this direction. It's going to be hitting the top of the ball. Just think of a moon and the sun. This is going to be the light side, and this side of the moon is going to be dark because the light will be coming from here. So what I'm going to do is put that dark in right now. So I use my darkest burnt umber. So this is mostly paint, very little water. And because I got it right out of the tube, because I was almost out in my palette, it's very dark. So, and did you notice that I did it in an arc? So my brushwork was in an arc fashion, which is, that's helping us create the illusion of round. If I went up and down, it wouldn't do that. So I want you to arc your brush so it feels round. Then I just wash my brush, and just with water, I'm going to pull paint like we just did on the other side. But I'm not going all the way into the paint. I'm just going to the edge of where that dark ended. And I'm going to pull it a little bit. And remember, this is just water. But the vehicle, water is the vehicle that moves the paint. So wherever the water goes, that's going to go too. So I wash my brush again. I'm leaving some water on it. And I'm not going into where the paint is. I'm just going to the edge. And I'm pulling it. I'm going to go around. And what I'm going to do is almost at the top, I'm going to leave white of the paper. Like you see in people's eyes, and if the sun was hitting the surface, there would be a light little dot of where the sun is completely reflected on it. So it's just creating the illusion of light. But this ball, this sphere, this orb that we've created is floating in space. It doesn't have anywhere to go. So what I want to do is I want to anchor it. So I'm going to put a drop shadow in. Now with shadows, the shadows are darkest right below the object. So see how dark that is? But as the object or the shadow gets further away, it gets lighter and paler. And each time I'm going to wash my brush and keep pulling. So it looks like the shadow kind of disappears. Now the reason I went this way with the drop shadow is because my light is coming from over here. So the shadow would go this way. If I put the shadow going that way with the light here, it wouldn't have visually made any sense at all. And so the viewer would think, what's wrong with this picture? So you have to think about these things when you're creating a painting from nothing. Just coming out of your head. You have to think, well, where's the light? If the light is here, then the shadow has to be here. So let's do another one. In this one, we can do the opposite. Again, there's no right or wrong way. So I'm going to take a super light brown, burnt umber. I'm going to leave a dot of light. And I'm going to paint the whole ball. Wash my brush and dry it. I want to pull some of the paint off a little bit, water. Now, when I say pull it off, this brush is not just a tool to put paint onto the paper, but it's also a tool to pull it off. So it's also a mop. If you wash and dry your brush and put it on wherever your paint is, it'll suck the paint off of it. So it's a tool that not only puts paint on, but it takes it off. All right, so there's our light value. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to take a darker burnt umber, and I'm going to do half the sphere. And remember, I'm doing it in an arc because I'm creating the illusion of round. And I left some of that light there because I want a light, a middle, and a dark value. Now with just a clean brush, I wash it and I dry it with my paper towel. I'm pulling some of that paint off to create that arc. So now what I'm going to do now is create that dark value. So I'm going in and I'm right at the edge, just touching it with the dark. Now, if you notice the difference between what we did the first time and the second time, the paint is bleeding right in. And that's because water is the vehicle that moves the paint. And this ball is all wet, so the dark is just bleeding right in, which is great. It takes a lot of the control away from you, but it also creates a very interesting wet and washy effect. So some artists prefer that and some don't. And every person, each one of you has got their own voice. So even though we're all painting the same thing, everyone's just going to come out completely different. And it's going to be based on your voice. And your voice, I mean your style. Okay, so that feels fairly round. Now I'm just going to anchor it. Like real dark underneath. Now it feels like it's sitting on a table. And then just with a wet brush, I'm going to pull that tail and it'll get lighter. And pull that a little bit too. Okay. So this one we went from dark to light. This one we went from light to dark. And we'll do another one. Now, this is an exercise that I really suggest you, during this whole process with me, always start with a little piece of paper and do like 2 or 3 of these. And your homework after this video is definitely to practice this. A whole sheet of marbles going across the table where they have drop shadows all going in the same direction. Notice that I'm washing my brush constantly and I'm pulling this paint up right at the edge. I don't go into the paint, I just go to the edge and I bring it up. I wash my brush, I go back in, and I'm working fast enough that it doesn't dry. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a dot of light because there is no white paint, remember, so we have to leave the white where it is or we lose it. Okay, so then I'm going to put a drop shadow. And then with I washed and dried my brush, I'm just going to pull it. A little bit of water on my brush. There we go. All right, so let's go back to what we were doing here with the blue. This is that mascoid, and you have to be careful. I just use my finger, which is probably terrible, but you'll see wherever I put, it's not completely dry, so it's not going to work perfectly, but you can just pull it, and it'll take that pattern will still be there. And you just brush off the debris. And then you can take some more of that paint, the same color paint, or a different color, doesn't matter, and you can go over it. So this is what I mean by tablecloth patterns. You can use mascoid and it'll create the pattern within the cloth. All right, and then we have the salt, which is still also wet, but I'm going to push it away. And you can see that it's left this incredible pattern on it. Sometimes I get carried away with putting too much. And then this left a little bit of a pattern, but not much. If I had let it dry more, we would have gotten more speckles. So your homework for this segment is, if you have mascoid, fine. I wouldn't buy it yet until you really know what you're doing. Try the salt thing, very cool. Remember, you have to let it completely, you want to put the salt on it while it's wet, and then throw the salt in there while they've just put the paint on, and then let it dry, leave it alone. When it's completely dry, you can wipe it off. And then the other square with the spray bottle, which again, you can get it like Michael's or Ben Franklin or any kind of art supply store should have a spray bottle. Do a square of any color, let it sit, don't let it completely dry, and then spray it, and you'll get those patterns. All right. The next thing I want you to do is make a dark puddle of burnt umber, lay in a square of dark, Then I want you to add water to the puddle and add another square while it's still wet. Add more water to it and continue to add water to it and add a square until you have just water. Oops. Then I want you to do the really dark square burnt umber, and then just with water on your brush, I want you to pull the paint, wash your brush, pull the paint, wash the brush, pull the paint, and you'll go from dark to middle to light. And the same thing here, I went with a light and then a middle and then a dark. But most importantly, and I think you'll learn the most from this, is this is something I still do. I mean, I make spheres all the time. I teach this class all the time, but this is one of the benefits, this is something that's just a great warm-up exercise, but when you're first learning, it really teaches you how to see in watercolor and what value really is. If you can create a sphere and make it feel round, you can use this and apply it to anything in a painting. So spending time on this and making sure you really understand this, and when you look at your spheres and they feel completely round, like you can pick them up, then you can apply that knowledge to anything. But in watercolor and the way I paint is I really stress that you crawl first. And just like when you were a baby, one day you decided to stand up and walk. You'll know when it's time to stand up and walk, and then you'll know when it's time to run. So it's crawl, walk, and run in this. You know, the slower you go and the more practice, the better you'll get. So follow these basic instructions, and I look forward to hearing from you and seeing what you do. Here's a couple of other orbs I did in color, but I want you to stick with burnt umber. And good luck and have fun. Don't forget to breathe and smile and enjoy this. All right, I'll talk to you soon.